see if. Hello, hello all. Thanks for joining. We're just still setting up at the moment. Basically, I'll just share this with you. Okay. Hello, Megan. Millan?
Yeah.
Hi. Can you stop your screen share for a second, because I've got a short presentation I need to do for mine. Oh, you're not screen sharing. Hold on.
Yeah, not sharing now. Probably.
Okay, I'll share.
Yes, can hear.
Hello, all. Just please bear with us for a few minutes. We're just waiting for another 5 minutes for people to join, and then we'll get started. As I said, please bear with us for a few minutes. We're just waiting for more people to join. We'll kick off at about 40 minutes past the hour. Hello, Siddharth. Thanks for joining. We're just waiting for a few more minutes for people to turn up, and then we'll start. Hello, Shruti. Thanks for joining. Hello, Shruti. Thanks for joining. We are recording this. This is going to go on YouTube. For those who aren't able to come today, I will also send a link to the YouTube. There's actually one already on the LinkedIn and the Meetup sites. To those of us who are joining on YouTube, thank you so much. Welcome. You can also make comments and post questions in the Meetup chat. Sorry, in the StreamYard. Sorry, the Facebook chat section, because this is a live stream. Okay, thank you. Let's get started. So, Millan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Thank you for joining. Well, obviously, thanks to Millan for agreeing to do his talk. Let me just show you this little presentation. Can you all see the screen share?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you. So I'll just do a proper slideshow. So this is a double build tonight. Our first online event of the year, our first actual meetup of the year. We've got the great Millan Kaul, who'll be talking about exploratory testing and automation, and then Manoj Kumar from LambdaTest and Selenium, a well-known person on the conference circuit in testing, and he's a great blogger as well on the subject. He'll be doing an Ask Me Anything, and I'll send you a link. Actually, the link is already on the Meetup and the LinkedIn sites, but I'll also post to the chat where you can post questions. But just to introduce, this is the agenda for tonight. So we put it in different time zones because there's a lot of interest from far outside of Australia. So we're currently doing the introduction by Sydney testers, and in 5 minutes, Millan will do his talk. That will be on using exploratory testing plus automation. There'll be a period of Q&A, and if there's any time allowed, we'll do some networking and socials. At 6:30 p.m. Sydney time, or 7:30 a.m. UTC. That's supposed to be 1:30. Sorry, 1:30 1:30 p.m. Sorry. Actually, have I got that wrong? It's at 1 o'clock, is it, Millan? I think I might have got that wrong. No, it's 1 o'clock. Sorry, 1 p.m. Indian Standard Time. We'll have an AMA and online fireside chat with Manoj Kumar. So I'll just change that. And then we'll have some online networking and socials for those who are able to stay on for a bit longer. So who are Sydney testers? We're a group of volunteers with a focus on improving testing in Sydney. We do in-person events and also online events. We organise monthly talks, socials and other events for the Sydney testing community. We have a wide range of local international speakers who've spoken to us with us over the years, including Michael Bolton, James Bark, Zoe Tivitt, Sam Connolly, Jean-Anne Harrison, Trish Koo, Baz Dijkstra, who will also be talking at the end of this month, Stephanie Russell, Matt Senton Rutherford from our exec committee, lots of good names. If you want to get involved, please speak to us or email me at paulwaltersau@gmail.com. So tonight's first speaker is Millan Kaul, and based here in Sydney, although you're moving off to Canada, aren't you, shortly? Great. Hope you enjoy it. He has a mindset towards quality improvement. He stays on top of thought leadership and anything engineering, especially quality and testing. And he's a hands-on engineer who's always on top of modern test automation tools and shift left. He spends a lot of time and is always happy to build test automation frameworks using Selenium, Cypress, Playwright, Appium, Swift UI, using his programming skills with Java, JavaScript, and Python. He can build down complex programming business problems, to shippable tasks using agile principles, safe agile, and he follows the cycle: learn, implement, and outperform. And if you want to contact him or follow him, you can do through these various social media links. And what I shall do is I shall stop the screen share. And Millan, once again, thank you for speaking. And it's, let me just change this as well before you start. So I've got to point it at the Zoom screen. This is for the YouTube people.
Yeah. Should I start sharing? Are you okay for me to start?
There we go.
Ooh, just confirm if somebody can see my screen.
I can see it. Let me just, I've just got to let a few people in the meeting room.
Yeah, I'll have to reshare it somehow. Just give me a second.
Just give me a few minutes while I let these people in.
Sure.
Yeah, just Manoj, who's also speaking, doing the AMA later. I've just made you a co-host, so which will help things a bit further on the line. Yeah, sorry for keeping you waiting, Millan. First of all, thanks to everyone who's joined, and the floor is yours.
Awesome, thank you. First of all, thanks, Paul. It's really complex job to manage multiple platforms, do the intro, and do all this with your day job. So I really appreciate that, and what a job done. Thank you for that. So without dealing much over here, I'll directly jump onto the topic. It's a bit different topic, or I would say more of a topic which is top of the town. Exploratory testing and automation. Can they be done together? I think let's explore. So now Paul has already done the formal introduction of myself and Sydney testers. I'll talk about what I'll be exactly talking about. So here we go. I'll be talking about exploratory testing and how, and more on why you should be complementing it with the scripted testing techniques such as test automation, and eventually how it may improve the testing processes and the testing outcomes. That is finding more bugs, right? Also how you can be a full stack QA, and then try to give some examples from mobile automation, if not like various other sources. So a formal introduction has already been done. Just to talk a bit about myself, while Paul has already done a great job. I would say I believe in, I'm an advocate for quality. A tester or a developer or a technology leader who is passionate about helping QAs as well as developers to deliver high quality products or projects. I believe, testers play the most important role in any development or delivery process, not just by testing, but also by, advocating on behalf of customers. For example, acting as a first internal customer of a software, watching the product from the lens of both internal organization as well as external users, right? Speeding up delivery by testing it for and with teams such as product owners, devs, PA. So you kind of engage and you do this whole mini management of the delivery, right, all the time. And of course, testers usually stay at the center by being an expert with knowledge on end-to-end systems and how they interact and more. I mean, I think I can keep on going. But in short, I believe I'm like most of us, who is just wanting to have less frustrated users and see more accessible softwares being delivered. Okay, so jumping onto the topic. Now that you bit know about me, I'm also part-time, Fitbit smartwatch app developer. Paul has already showed it. I do write blogs on my own website. Paul has also co-authored a blog on my website, and there are a few. If you're interested, just reach out to me, and we'll publish yours. During the presentation, feel free to put your questions on the chat. I am sure Paul is trying to do his best job to manage and maintain chats and moderating the online platforms. Cool. So before even we really go into what is the difference or how we can do both exploratory and automation together, I wanted to share that sometime back I created a repository in GitHub. It's a public one with Rahul. You can find him on LinkedIn. And we created this repository on GitHub, and we try to understand how many roles are there in the name of a tester role. And we were shocked to see that there were more than 130 roles in the market, and people were adding very unique roles on that GitHub repo. So you can pretty much go and add your role. Link is there on your slide. But the point here is, if you talk to someone who is like 10 plus years of experience in testing or development like me, let them know. I mean, it's an old school tale that there is only one kind of role, which is a software tester or a kind of test engineer. So basically, we have to change the mindset. How a tester, SDET, or any automation QA has been doing and managing with Agile. And yes, Agile has changed it, right? And the overall, I think the core thing which Agile has changed is the mindset. So I also wanted to quickly talk about how the world has heavily invested and built various testing tools in last few years with this whole Agile thing. I mean, we all know that it started with Selenium, but then let me show you the next slide. This is not a complete list, but I think it gives a fair bit of idea of how Agile brought importance of continuous delivery and how Agile has evolved. And if I can say, Agile has forced us to solve the problem of retesting, not regression. Small shippable product. So we are retesting small shippable products or pieces of products in Agile manner, and then modifying them fortnightly to see if the old works or still kind of broken. And that term was given name as sprints. So we can every sprint we do that retesting, and then somewhere yes we need some tools and technologies to help us doing that old thing, right? So that we focus on the new and the unexplored part of it. We talk about that, and the need of test automation for really getting the confidence of delivery. That was the main and core purpose, I believe. That nothing is broken in new release. This could be this could have been an overkill for exploratory testing or manual testing to test same thing again and again when you started with a small sprint, and then it becomes a very huge product, right? On that note, let's do a formal part and take a bit deep dive into the exploratory testing. So even before that, there's a reference for my previous talk, which I did with Aptitudes last year in October. And there as well, I did emphasize how much important exploratory testing is, and that too in the center of the delivery. So the talk was about when to shift left, when to go right, and be in center. Although exploratory testing should be done throughout the delivery process, but I firmly believe at the center, when you're building new products, changing things, getting more things into your pipeline sprints, exploratory testing is a must-have out of this, these top six I kind of created in my slide over there. And then, there are techniques. There are various techniques. I'll probably touch a few of them in my presentation today. So when new systems are built, basically, you kind of know that things are maintained. So what is exploratory testing? I believe I don't need to, give a formal copy-paste wiki definition over here. So let's say like this: if you have a mobile app and has a step for ID verification with where you're supposed to scan your face, would you think to explore a scenario and ask your team to come on the camera together and see what's happening? And would you rather having one person doing multiple person scanning? Maybe it will keep on scanning. Maybe it will like time out, or maybe it accepts your image, group image. And probably if that's the case, either your software was not too smart, or your appearance is really confusing the camera, right? So let's give it a visual. Okay. And while we give it a visual, do you think this we can test it with like unit test case? Can you test it? No, right? Would any automation tool be able to do this, like on CI/CD pipeline? Maybe yes, but then the whole AI and image processing and setting up so many things. But the question is it worth it? Worth the bucks? How many times would you put this test? So with my experience, how would you tackle this situation? Is you would pretty much time box this test, this scenario. You'll go out for a walk and come up with a result, or probably give feedbacks to them, or maybe you'll come up with some findings. It's very interesting findings with screenshots, with maybe documentation with the timing, how your camera reacted when you went on the sunlight, kind of thing, right? So for this presentation, let's consider what I just explained is exploratory testing, right? And yes, it is interesting, right? And you'll get to see more about it. Now, I have to call out this: what should not be the goal of exploratory testing, right? It's not about exploring the application. So remember, we want to understand the system in order to improve, not to break it. So we have to improve the system. And there are various performance testing tools to do that efficiently, doing the explore testing or load testing or kind of SOAP testing, and they do generate good reports. But exploratory testing is pretty much not for that. Exploration is more of thinking out of the box, with experience, maybe, see, observe, try a scenario not so usual. It's not scripted in test case, and the scenario which is like not in your test case, like manual execution test case or automated test case, right? The push for exploratory testing basically should come from your mind, and of course the experience you have with the product. So it's a combination of experience and the time you spend with the product. So you don't just do the same, user login and logout scenario. You pretty much go into the system and see how and what happens when things break. So try to find that breaking point. Go beyond the boundaries. Remember, the goal is not to find the bugs, but understand the system and its boundaries, and possibly document that report. For example, how much time it took you to reach that scenario. Was it a complex one? What all systems were involved? And kind of all these things. And these things will really go a long way, because when you share these findings with the development team or your product team, they would really start thinking more ways around. Right? You don't want to be paying customer thousands of dollars just for a small silly bug, which they would find something. And these are, very bullet points and high level of things which should be covered during your exploratory, exploration. Okay, so maybe I'll give some examples and take an example and kind of help you to relate this exploratory testing and all theory I'm talking about. So I just took a simple example of a bank ledger or your transaction screen where you kind of see credit and debits, right? If you have to really do exploratory testing, what would you do? How would you do it? So I just shortlisted five bullet points, but then can be more. So one way is to test different transaction scenarios, right? You basically explore different transaction scenarios such as like deposit, withdrawals, transfers, refunds. So it's not just credit and debit. You can literally go deeper into it. And you kind of ensure the system is correctly recording all these and updating balance. You just don't do credit debit. You kind of have a look at the balance as well. Right? Can you go negative? Can you go beyond zero? What happens then? Kind of you keep on debiting. Do you get the error? And all that kind of thing. And another way could be verifying data accuracy. Verify that the ledger accurately reflects the transaction balances, and kind of that data is consistent across different accounts and platforms. So how we have web banking, mobile banking. So if you do this transaction, does it really appear in both the platforms seamlessly, or they work on a different backend for front end, or they have a different microservice? That's really important. I mean, user is getting smart day by day, and testers do have to. Another way of doing exploratory testing of this scenario can be test for exception cases, such as I said, invalid transactions, overdrafts, insufficient funds to ensure that system is handling error correctly. There's a concept called you do a pre-auth. So when you do a pre-auth, your funds are temporarily out of your control, and then let's say you had $1,000 balance, you have pre-auth with 200, and you have $800 left in your account. But what if you want to go for a $900 transaction? Kind of see what happens with these exception cases, and these all will come to your mind with experience of testing the application. That's where we become the expert exploratory tester. You explore it, you go deep and further beyond the boundaries, right? Most of the people don't know with the exploratory testing, you can even cover security and performance testing. If you go to any of the big companies which have this security bug bounty, and they pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for finding a security bug, none of the bugs have been found through automation testing software or like an automation tool. They all were basically explored by a user, trying to do and reach that edge case to break the system. And unauthorized access data breaches, for these are very common ways of validating the security compliance testing. And then for that, and for the performance as well. I mean, usually the mindset is only performance testing tools can do performance, right? No, I don't think so. Even if a performance testing tool is running some specific test, and during that time, you really do a weird test, which kind of messes up with your system and kind of gives you unexpected output, right? Can be a combination of that. And that's what we'll talk about, right? How you can really mix and match both exploratory and kind of these automation or scripted tests, right? Okay. I think these points are good to give you an idea about exploratory testing and how huge and broad the scope is. And even understanding it's not just that manual testing where you really know what to do. And it is limitless. So it's very important to time box your exploratory testing and be very confident what you're testing. Otherwise, either you would end up just testing it infinitely, which any project never has got time and budget, or you would pretty much have no idea what to do because you would be literally looking at your test scripts. So I would also share some fancy ideas how to do exploratory testing. I mean, you cannot reach all the scenarios of application. You really need a team. And then you don't always have a big team in agile world. You usually have one or two testers in a team of 6 or 7, right? That's a standard size. So some tips and ways to do exploratory testing, which I'm going to be talking to here, is like always start with a session with the team. Get your team into a room or a meeting room, and specifically the teammates who are not the tester of the app, and defining that you're going to be giving user XYZ to this team member, or say the person testing the app and all that. So later, so that within 30 minutes, impossible to find and record everything. But if you know who was testing what user, you can pretty much go back, look at server logs, app server logs, microservice log. I mean, there are many places, right? Analytics. I mean, they would give you, an understanding what that user was really doing, basically what exploratory sessions they really were running into. As well. Make sure you reward all of them for finding complex bugs, bugs which are really human findable, cannot be cannot be found through unit testing or so on and so forth. Right? Rewarding can be appreciation. And if your company's got budget, go for some gift cards and all that. But yeah, I mean, I hope I have given you a bit of an idea about the whole exploratory testing thing. In a nutshell, exploratory testing can weigh out scripted testing, I would say here, by allowing testers to exercise their creativity, intuition, and domain expertise to really explore the application, right? And identify the issues that might not be caught during scripted testing or automation unit testing, right? Because as we know that scripted testing usually follows a predetermined test cases and steps, I mean, may or may not cover all possible scenarios, right? And on the other hand, exploratory testing can adapt to changes in the application and explore areas where that scripted testing may not really go into deep, right? So that kind of thing. On that note, I'll take a reference from my AppTools presentation here again, and tell you once again, like, the testing is a continuous process, right? And it needs to be done by experience. Testing itself needs experience. We really need techniques. Can be various techniques. The previous slide, which I was showing you, we used to call it as bug blitz in our previous content, where we have a conference documented page, test data, user IDs, who will use what, and then we go for that. Right? But coming to the ongoing testing with this agile mindset, experience is really what matters. Time management, you have to manage time very well for exploratory testing. As I said, otherwise you would go on doing testing for day in and day out. Documentation. If you can't document what you tested and found, it would be very hard to go back and fix it for anyone. Once again, test data management is the centerpiece of all this. Right? So now, I mean, as I said, testing is a continuous process. It's a journey as well, right? So based upon how much time you are away from going to prod, you can do various tests. So as if you're close to production, you would not have time to do automation. If you are at the start of your budget, you have budget, you have time, you can do automation on the left-hand side of the slides. If there is a bug, you have to fix it right away. You cannot write, if you find a hot fix, or like there is a bug which is going to go through hot fix, you'll not write automation test. It will not take like 1.5 hours or so, right? So you have to be kind of justified for which technique to use, exploratory versus automation. And then it's a journey. It's a journey. So it's an ongoing journey, I would rather say. Right? Cool. So now coming to automation. So for automation, I had a similar slide in that presentation where I gave like an ASAP model, which is more of a left side. So if you have enough time, you pretty much have scope to do all these things. And automation was one of them. So I would say, like as I said, automation is the talk of town, and more specifically, the debate on automation tool, which is better than one is better than other kind of thing. Right? I mean, personally, I would encourage the testing community to focus on what to deliver. Even if you want to automate something, do it. I mean, start with something working. Don't really do over-engineering or reinventing the wheel kind of thing. Invest time to know what is the team's capability. So you need to know your automation team or your development team. You use Java, Python. These things are not going to change. These are going to be long-lived things, and these are the core of any tool you use, right? Can your developers contribute to your automation code? So, for example, if you're working with a back-end team who has written microservices from last 10 years, and they have always done it in Java Kotlin, and then you're asking them to suddenly jump onto JavaScript and kind of understand the sync async concept and try to automate. I mean, you are giving them a challenge rather than finding the bugs or improving the quality. So it's a team thing. Before even you decide a tool in the team, have a discussion with your team in your stand-up, or just arrange a separate session. Do some time-boxed POCs before you kind of jump and decide on the final thing. I mean, I have never seen a product with one developer and 5 testers until rest of the developers have left the project or others are in leave. Still, I mean, I've never seen heard that. So basically, you always have a short testing team. It's always good to involve developers either for feedback or you can involve them in test automation or designing the framework, discussing. I mean, referring to their code. Sometimes that helps you a lot and saves you a lot of time because you're eventually testing something which is already developed, right? And possibly reusing their code, which is, I think, the best practice and saves a lot of time. Interesting way to involve developers in your automation is ask them to review your PR or your pull request. And don't be afraid. I mean, if you haven't done that or you're doing it first time, don't be afraid. Either you would learn something or it would always be praised. Right? So they would never become pains. So scripted testing can be unit testing, writing a bash shell script, Ansible, platform Docker, YAML. I mean, can be anything, APM or something meaningful. Right? So that can be a part of scripted testing. Okay. So how about I take the same example of Ledger? Just holding here, Paul. Am I audible? Because I think I'm a bit frozen.
I can. Your video cam looks frozen, but I can hear you all right, and screen, slides are changing okay.
Awesome. So for the time being, I just switch off my camera.
Yeah, that might be the best thing.
Again, taking the same example of automating a ledger. Thanks, Paul. And then how would you go about testing that with automation or like scripted testing? Same thing, right? So there are various ways, and these are top 5, but can be more better ways you would know than what you are seeing here. Right? So one can be using a robust testing framework. You basically use a robust framework which is like very much well maintained, well proven, that supports automation of various test cases. Can be UI testing, API, database testing, mobile testing. Right? So basically, using an automation framework could be your start of testing the ledger. Go for automated end-to-end flows. That usually takes much of time when you do it manually. So automating end-to-end scenarios that kind of simulates a real-world use scenario. For example, again, transferring money and funds and joint accounts and all that, which are very tough to test and do manually. Right? Test data accuracy is something when somebody tests using exploratory testing techniques or as a functional tester, kind of tend to miss it. Like, we are humans, right? We can make mistakes, but when you automate it, when you write code to test that, you kind of get a better guarantee about the accuracy of data validation. So you create test cases that reflect transactions, so you know what was the amount credited, what was the test user you generated, and all that. So you basically are very strong about the final amounts you're testing, especially in the banking world. Go for exceptional cases, right? Automate test cases that handle exception cases, such as, again, invalid transactions, sufficient funds, right? But then we were pretty much doing the same in exploratory testing. Would you really be doing that again and again at this time? No. Right? So you would automate the scenarios which you are going to be retesting, right? The thing which you can't really get into exploratory testing is CI/CD pipeline, right? It's very hard to get somebody sit inside the pipeline. So you basically use automation tools and do that repeat testing parallelly. It's a companion, right? It's happening in parallel, and you get regular feedback. You know what was broken in previous release versus this release. Some automated reporting tools make your life easy. You don't have to document everything on your favorite documentation tools, right? Kind of thing. So that was about automation. And again, in short, scripted testing can weigh out exploratory testing in certain situations, right? Scripted testing provides structured and repeatability, which can be useful in ensuring consistent testing and reducing the risk of missing critical test scenarios or repeat tests. Right? Although if you build a feature in past and if that's critical, you really want to make sure that works all the time. I mean, there can be many, but there are very specific examples which I think are better suited as a candidate for automation testing: compliance, compliance is very, very important for any business, compliance and auditing. No business or company want to be fined for that. So better, and then they have a very fixed and rigid requirements, right? So why not automate that kind of thing, right? High risk scenarios which you think should always work. Right? So it's your priority one scenario in automation. You can cherry pick those and make sure they're always running and working, kind of irrespective of time and release and branch or test environment. Large scale testing. I mean, you cannot have 100 manual, exploratory testers testing one application, right? For some scenarios like chaos and monkey testing, you basically automate it through either performance testing tool or similar tools, right? Reproducibility. I think scripted testing allows us test case, of course, to be reproduced consistently, which is sometimes very important in diagnosing, of the issues. So, I mean, you pretty much know that there is a production bug, but then everything is working. How do you verify which scenario is broken? Unit test cases, 100% pass. So that's where your scripted testing techniques can really help and find and go to the bottom deep of the issue. Performance verification, pretty much, I mean, I would say a bit of compliance testing, but then in situations where verification is required, such as safety critical systems, aerospace, you really don't want to rely on a person, right, for testing a critical satellite launch, for example, right? Scripted testing can provide more rigorous and structured approach to testing, which gives more confidence in those scenarios. So while exploratory testing allows for creativity and flexibility in testing, there are certain situations where the structure and repeatability of scripted testing may be more advantageous. Ultimately, the choice is between exploratory testing and scripted testing, but I believe both are a good companion, right? You really have the same goal of improving the quality and delivering high quality products. That's where I kind of cover both what they do and how they can do together. This was the pretty much end of my talk. If you, I mean, Paul has already talked about it. I have just started my own blog. Like I said, I'll be discussing about it. Paul and then a couple of other authors have co-authored their blogs with their time on my website. If you are really interested, just go, and these are the sneak peek of the various topics which are tagged by these things, and there are more in pipeline. So get in touch with me, and we'll publish your next blog on that. You can also scan this QR code, and probably it will take you to my blog, which is qualitywithmillan.github.io. It's a public repository. Code is public. You can go and change. So what are the key takeaways? One, both exploratory testing and scripted testing have unique benefits to offer, right? So it's not one over the other, right? Exploratory testing needs more complex, human, I would say human-centric skills, and then just give me a second. Yeah. So so the next one was as I said, exploratory testing is more complex, human-centric, needs human-centric skills. But test automation is there to save time. Test old and existing things every time, repeat. Right? Combining both techniques may offer better outcomes as compared to cherry picking one of the two. That's for sure. And involve complete team in testing. It should not just be you. And on that note, I would say thank you for having me here, and I hope you all got to think about exploratory and automation. This is not the whole world of explanation, but when go and explore, every team and product would do the same thing in their own pretty style. Create your own style, follow that, make it a practice. Documentation is the thing which will take a long way. Talk to developers, involve them in testing, get involved in development. If you can't write the code, just read the code, right? Pretty much. There are various avenues to get involved in that. And with my experience, I mean, developers have had trouble and challenges with exploratory testing. They sometimes don't get how to do it. They are too good at automating writing code. So be their friends and kind of help them, have those regular update sessions, or work finding sessions monthly, if not fortnightly, and that would take you and your team a long way around. That's it from my side. Over to you, Paul.
Hi. Sorry, I didn't realize I was still on mute. Thank you so much, Manoj. Sorry, thank you so much, Millan. That was a great talk. I really appreciate it, and lots of interesting stuff there. I've just got a few questions I'd like to ask myself. What I would, and I'd like to say, if anybody wants to ask you any questions, you can either post it in the chat, the meeting chat for either Facebook or Zoom, or you can just unmute yourself and ask. So I've got a particular question I'd like to ask about. Sorry, I just put myself, share my video again. I just want to ask, in terms of how you structure exploratory testing, in terms of the documentation that you do, I mean, is there a certain principle that you follow, or that you encourage? Do you go for minimal documentation? Do you go for sort of session-based test management? Do you have a particular, do you have a
tool
particular
of choice kind of thing, or the pattern?
philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, there are two ways to answer. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, there's two ways to answer. One is about tool of choice. So yes, if you are testing a web-based application, there are many plugins. There are, even if you go to LambdaTest website, they have pretty much a very well document about exploratory testing, which I was reading the other day. There are tools which will help you, but then eventually really have to export that into a understandable format, which when I say understandable, it's more of related to your business, your teams. Can they understand it? Can they follow it? Can they refer it back? It can be a Jira, it can be a Microsoft document, right? It can be anything. So that's about the tooling. And about my way of doing it. Yes, it's always good to have a sample, mini template ready, which again goes by project to project, if not on the company level. So it's always good to have that effort put at the beginning, have that format ready. So if it's a mobile app, you pretty much know that you need a user ID password to do anything with a logged-in user. For a public website, you may not need it. For API testing, you pretty much need more of JSON, faker JSON, generate test data kind of tools. So there's a mix and match, I would say, Paul.
Okay, cool, great stuff. Thank you. So we've got our first question in the chat. This is from Prabodh Kelkar. He wants to know, the exploratory testing you mentioned, is it more like bug bashers with extended teams? Are there any comments on that?
Yeah. So the one which I think you're talking about, the slide where all these developers are using the mobile app. If that was the screen, yes, it's a bug bash or bug blitz. And you can name it whatever you really enjoy calling it as. But yes, it's more of that. And yes, with the existing team, extended teams as well as existing teams. So you always run a first session with your internal team, so that you really don't get so many complaints from the external team. And then once you are pretty much solid, your developers are confident that, oh, the application is 90% perfect. Then you go beyond and arrange this session with the external people. Can be developers, can be anybody. And yes, and you make it very easy, like you would do it for user, right? You would not make it very technical. Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Prabodh, but just let me know in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody who would like to ask a question by unmuting themselves? Please go ahead. Or asking in the chat, maybe? Okay, I've got a few more questions, if that's all right.
Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that I like to, one of the things that I found, and particularly I found this recently in recruiting, actually, doing interviews and things, is there's a lot of misconceptions about exploratory testing. In terms of what it means, who can do it, how much documentation there is, is it just mindless clicking, that sort of thing. As somebody who's promoting exploratory testing, do you find a lot of these, misconceptions, and how do you address them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, even when I was doing a bit of deep dive research into the topic before giving this presentation, I got confused. Couple of articles, they have written in such a confident that, okay, this is what exploratory testing is. I mean, few people are talking about chaos testing is exploratory testing. No, that's a different one, right? Manual testing is totally different from exploratory testing. Exploratory testing needs at least fair bit of experience and knowledge with the apps and existing knowledge. It needs the mindset towards finding and going deep down into that hidden scenarios. spending time understanding the existing application. So it's not a test case based testing application, right? Kind of thing. It's, as I said, I mean, it's a bit confusing in the sense it's a different mindset, and as normally in the testing world, either the standard definitions are on ISTQB website or they are on Wiki, right? But then they are just one way of looking at it. The way the world has evolved with Agile has kind of, I would say, not really messed with it, but kind of had changed the definition. So it's like more of make it the way it fits your delivery, right? So you kind of modify it on the fly.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you. So anybody else want to pose another question? You can unmute them. You can either ask in the chat or unmute yourself. Okay. All right. I'll keep going then. In terms of training people up to have that mindset. I mean, even among testers, sometimes you do find testers whose mindset, especially if they've come from a long period of scripted testing, they struggle to embrace the mindset of exploratory testing. Over time, you have people like Jane Spark and Michael Bolton, the rapid software testing motion, who want to basically, their view of testing done properly is always exploratory testing, or at least exploratory testing mindset. Have you come across people who you've worked with, or you've directed in terms of who have struggled with exploratory testing, with exploration mindset, should I say, and how did you help? Was it possible to help them? How did you manage to, coach them or instruct them or help them?
I think I have gone through that situation, so pretty much I'll try to give an answer. First of all, I didn't have success all the time in solving the puzzle of how to do exploratory testing. Again, it's application based. For example, and most of the questions usually not comes from tester; they come from a team who does not have a tester.
Yeah.
So and those are the teams who are really struggling to find that expert. Right. In normal, day-to-day life, testers are so good at it. They would usually find it out. I mean, they would put that bug in their, bug tracking tool, one or the other way, being advocate of quality. But with the development teams, yes, the situation I have been approached on how to fix it. I have been able to fix many teams. But then the challenge for the QA or somebody who's explaining exploratory testing comes when a team with like whole microservice-based application comes to you and say, can you help us in microservice-based testing? Specifically when they are developing 5 microservices, which doesn't talk to a UI or any other thing. They're just independent. So if it's a web-based front end or a mobile-based, it's so easy. It goes very challenging. Now the situation has come to me. How do I solve it? So I basically try to understand what their application is doing. Even if it's not directly hitting any front end, at the end of the day, it would be either hitting a standard application API, or 90% of the time, after a couple of microservices patterns, it would hit a UI. So I would let them understand that your whole team's upstream and downstream processes or other APIs are going to be coming through this path. So we go 3 to 4 steps back and start the testing from there. That's how we tell them this is so easy to go and test. And that's how they see data coming in. And then the teams are very expert. They really get deep into it. And then they understand, oh, if I create this kind of customer, I get this JSON payload, for example, right? Or XML payload. And that's the way we have helped. So it's more about explaining teams. The end-to-end testing is the real crux of, getting exploratory testing done. You cannot just have this small application test being tested. So you really have to go and jump between applications, for example. But yeah, I mean, it depends upon the type of project.
Understood. Thank you. And I just want to say, Millan, I apologize that during some of your talk, I had to drop off for a second because there were audio problems with the YouTube stream. So I missed a small part of your talk, and that's probably the reason why I missed what you said. Are there any? What we're going to do is we're going to give it another minute or so, and then we'll move over to the next talk, the AMA that we're having with Manoj Kumar. Millan, would you be interested in staying on as a co-host?
I think we have. Yeah, I can stay there. I think
right,
we have another question from. I cannot.
Yeah, that's
just
it.
See the name, but yeah.
I just saw it's by
Is
Venus
there
Rivera.
a specific time limit on how long we should be spending time doing exploratory testing?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, that's the core of it. There should be a time limit. You can do it every month or you can do it every fortnight, but make sure you don't spend hours and hours. So even if you do it for 30 minutes and with like 8 people, you're already having 4 hours of effort. And then you have to cover your scripted testing, either functional or automated, and then you have to deliver products, right? So the goal of exploratory testing is time box, do as much as you can fast, go deep down into scenarios. Ideally, the exploratory testing sessions, bug blitz, bug bash, happens for 30 minutes. But then 30 minutes when you already have test data prepared, you know the test cases, you know who is coming to the session and assign them. But it should never go beyond 45 minutes or like an hour, right? So that's ideal one. But then if your team is enjoying it, go for it.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your talk.
Cool. Thank you.
As I said, please, you're welcome to, please stay on as a co-host. You're most welcome. We're going to move on now because it's half past the hour to Manoj's talk. First of all, I'm just going to do Manoj's AMA. First of all, I'm going to introduce Manoj using a slide I prepared. And thank you. Good to see you, Manoj.
Good to see you too.
All right, cool. Thank you. What I'm just going to do is I'm just going to share my screen again and show the slide I prepared. I've got to do that in 2 different applications because of the YouTube live stream. Okay, can you all see the slide?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you. So this is our second event tonight. Is first of all, I want to say thank you to Millan and give him a round of applause. Unfortunately, it's not easy to do that in a live chat, but he did a great talk, and we really appreciate it. Secondly, tonight's second guest is Manoj Kumar, and the guy is very popular on the conference circuit and a well-known tester. He's a developer, tester, blogger, and open source enthusiast. He's currently the developer relations and open source office lead at LambdaTest, and he's also vice president. He enjoys exploring the entire software development lifecycle, particularly interested in solving problems in digital transformation, software quality, HCI, and cloud computing spaces, working in enterprises, fintech, and early stage startups for over 13 years. Quite a great career. He holds a master's degree in software engineering from BITS Milani. He's an avid open source enthusiast, committed to the Selenium and Appium projects. He's also part of the project leadership team at Selenium, and he's contributed to various libraries and frameworks like ng WebDriver, Protractor, and Serenity. Hosts his own projects on Docker and Kubernetes in the automated testing ecosystem. So, a guy who's had a lot of experience and a lot of success, and with a wide range of tools and frameworks. If you want to see his website, it's manojkk.com, and you can see his Twitter and LinkedIn. So I'll just stop sharing at that point. Manoj?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've done a bit of your background. So good to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
No, thank you. I also know you had a bit of a long history with Sydney Testers as well. You were involved back in the early days.
Yeah, that's right. I just accidentally realized yesterday that I'm still one of the organizers.
You
The
are,
access
yes.
has not been revoked, but yeah, I used to be helping behind the scenes,
Mm.
nowhere on the limelight. But yeah, little help that I can do to bring together the community. Spent a considerable amount of time. I think 2014 to 2019, I was in Sydney
Yeah.
most of the time and worked with a lot of people, across a lot of companies in Sydney, in Melbourne. Yeah, I think back in India right now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, excellent. Well done. Now, one of the things I have noticed is that I have said is that you've been very much involved in public speaking, and so as somebody who's and that's very much a part of the testing. You're always also very much involved in the testing community. Um, I mean, what is it to you to be involved in the testing community? What, I mean, do you get a great vibe from that sort of communication, that continuous learning, that continuous what's the word? You know, evangelizing.
Got it. Yeah, I'm sure. I think it'll go way back, 2013, 2012, when I first got introduced to being to, exposed to conferences
Mm.
as an attendee as well as a speaker. I think the eye-opening experience for me all is all about the learning that you get. It might not be equal to what you do day to day, or you go and attend some trainings. You get knowledge beyond that because you try to hear from all the thought leaders, what they're doing the best of their work, because it's not, you know if someone is organizing a conference and putting up a program, it's not an ever easy task.
I understand.
And
Yeah.
it's done with all due diligence, so you get to hear the best, right? So
Mm.
what better way from learning from your community peers rather than spending a lot of time. So it's a way of, you know
Mm.
learning is what I see. And yeah, I mean, I felt like it's sort of a validation for me and what are the things that I'm doing. I've gotten positive feedbacks, also got negative feedbacks about, particular approach where I've given a talk and I learned from them and I implemented back at my work. I gave a talk on the same concept, accrediting, the person who commented on that. So it's a lot of, I would say it's to put it technical, it's bi-directional, as I say. It's a win-win situation for you as well as, other person who's hearing what you have to share.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Well, that's great stuff. Can you just tell us about how you got into testing, about your route? Did you do it immediately from leaving university, or was it something that happened accidentally?
No, it is straight out of the university. I would say I wanted to be developer using my university days. I developed a lot of applications back then. It was all COBOL VB script. So I
Mm,
used to develop the VB script based applications
yeah.
for Windows desktop. So I got fascinated by developing a lot of these applications. Even did projects for a lot of my peers, juniors, seniors, and all of them. So that's how I started, and I wanted to be in that field. But you never know. I started my career with Wipro, and the way that happens is, they recruit a bunch of people. You put in some batch, and they allocate randomly based on, whatever mechanism. And I actually got into a training on testing, and I was exposed to testing concepts of 3 months training, which included automation tools like QDP on training. So that's how I really started, and from there,
Mm.
it's the journey has been to various different things along the lines.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And how did you start in terms of open source, in terms of, say, working with the Selenium project, Appium? Is it just that you have a passion for dev and you want to apply it in that area, or did they ask you? How did that happen?
Yeah, it's an interesting story as well as, the story continues from where I left for the previous question. So after I
Mm,
joined, after I finished the 3 month training, the first project that I ever wanted to do, since the managers know that I wanted to try my hands on in development, they said, yeah, this is a project which has the blend of both, where you could do testing as well as do development. I was wondering like what the role could be, and that's when I came to know the automation as a role. And when the role for me at that point in time was to evaluate, tools to automate the web applications and the APIs. It was service-oriented architecture, not even REST APIs back then. It's all, SOA, service-oriented architecture, SOAP UIs, tools, scripting. I've used a Groovy scripting back then, and basically to do a POC on Selenium, right? So to
Okay,
evaluate
cool.
whether it will fit the bill or right. So that's when my journey started very early, in my career, evaluating. I think if I remember correctly, the version was somewhere around Selenium 1 dot something, very sure. And when I was doing some POCs and then successfully finishing it and adopting the tool base, a lot of problems comes across. And when that happened, I couldn't find a lot of help across, since it's an open source tool. And then I realized that there is a IRC channel where you could go hang around, chat with the people who develop actual Selenium. And I had such conversation and they were so helpful. And then the question came to me was why this is not documented. And the answer given back by the people who answered me was like, great question. Why don't you contribute?
Mm.
And again, it was an eye opening. It's like, oh, really? Can I contribute? How do I do so? That's when really things started. Um, you know, from a guy who started contributing to documentation to various different APIs. So that's when actually open source started for me. So that sort of trend I continued because I saw value in it. I answered questions from a lot of people who were there. So that made me more experienced and be prepared and informed. Like in the future, yeah, I might face some problems like this. So maybe I can listen from these people answering them as well as the questions and all of that. So that's how really my open source journey started. And thank you for reading out all the tools names on the introduction. And that's how every tool has an introduction or a backstory behind it, how I started. It was all during various parts of
I understand.
life,
Yeah.
various different technologies, implementation. When something is not there, I don't complain. I try to see if the community is welcoming contributions. If yes, directly go and contribute. And in that way, I've always seen it as rewarding, very, very rewarding.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Shall we go into the questions that were raised in the Slido?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. There's some really good ones, actually. I shall share that. Just give me a second. I've got to share it in 2 places.
Yeah.
And I will extend I'll zoom it up so people can see it. So we had 5 questions from our open Slido. I'll go through them in terms of who got the most votes. If anybody, now considering we're in the chat, once we finish with these questions, if anybody wants to ask any further questions, you can either do it through the meetup, through the Zoom chat, or you can unmic yourself, or you can ask through YouTube if you're watching on that environment. You can just go into the YouTube live chat. But we'll start off with these. We'll start with the top one. If I'm a manual tester looking to break into UI test automation, but I can't get experience in my employer, what should I do?
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful question, and it's also most commonly asked in most of the conferences. I think you need to firstly allocate time, whether it's, I don't know if you're able to allocate some time at the workplace. I think if you already say can't get that experience at the employer, assuming that you don't have even time. I mean, if you have time at work, that's great, even if it's lunchtime, yeah, or at least after work. I think most of the learnings that I did back then was after work. So again, I don't advise that when you need a good balance between your work life. Um, I think let's take a step-by-step approach. I think in order to break into any automation for that matter, not just UI, right? I think automation is all about development, right? As Milan also was saying in his talk earlier, developers are good at it because they are the ones who knows, how to develop stuff. As a testers, we know how to break things, how to validate something is working or not. So you should try to transform yourself from having that sort of mindset to see how you can develop something that is able to exactly process how would you test something, right? So by what I'm trying to say this is, you need to get a strong ground on one language at least,
Yeah.
because the base for any automation is a programming language, because you're developing something, and any test code is as equal as production code, as we say. So the first step is to get a good ground on any programming language, be it Java, Python. I think once you get a good ground of it, you could directly jump into UI automation if that's your interest, or API automation for that matter. I think try to learn the fundamentals of TDD, test-driven development, even if you're a tester, because not most of them do. And I started doing it after say 7 years somewhere in my career, and I didn't realize how important was that, because even though the TDD is something that developers should practice, by the procedural things that happens across the software development life cycle. I mean, TDD will get you a lot of things, right? So what are you write a test, watch it fail, and then look at the requirement, make it pass. But then you understand how things go. So that will fundamentally get you some sort of idea on how do you test things, right?
Mm.
Because having some methods, and then even if it's an API call, even if it's UI test automation call, so just enough basics. So I think language, and then set the basics up, and then pick a tool, right? So tool is comes the fag end of the story here. Even if it is UI automation, even if it's API, there are quite a few tools, right? I mean, there is contract-based testing, there is API-based testing, you have REST API, you have GraphQL, you have now gRPCs. So I'm telling you, there is lots and lots of things that will even want to come up in a couple of coming years. I think after learning good programming language, you feel, yeah, I have good uh, confidence that I'll be able to develop something and I'm able to do it. And I think you can practice. There's lots of demo websites. There's a lot of mock APIs, if you wanted to automate and practice. And a lot of people, what they don't think when you try to first getting into automation is, say, a login scenario. So what do you typically do as a manual tester or exploratory tester, right? So yeah, you open up a browser, put in your application to test URL, you try to enter username, password, and then do a quick glance of everything looks okay, at least the logo, right? So you're making sure you're in the current application. And then enter username, password, and then click on submit, and then wait for the page load or a pop-up, whatever it is, right? So try to map this in a sequential process, right? I mean, automation is always sequential. So try to write or map APIs for any tool. Let's take Selenium, for example, or I'm assuming all the other languages will have similar APIs. So opening up a browser, so it is something like Firefox or Chrome, you have similar APIs, and then you have moving to a particular URL. So each of the tools like Playwright, Cypress, or any low code, no code tools, whatever, they will have some APIs to uh, move to a particular. So like that you do. So you have all manual steps, and then you navigate each API. All right. So once you map, what you're trying to do. So that is one ways for understanding how the APIs in the tool works, because a lot of people say, yeah, I saw a getting started script on somewhere in documentation, I copy paste and I run it. Yeah, it works, my environment is good. Now they don't know, and they try to rework from that script. I mean, rather than take this approach, it will definitely work, because you already know the language. It's just that APIs, you need to know from the tool. After that, whether you're using any language constructs, like applying object-oriented concepts, and all of this stuff, so depending upon your use cases, scenarios, and all of it, right? So login was just one example,
Okay.
but once you move from there, a lot of concepts that you will get involved with. I think that should be the way to go. Just to summarize quickly, I think programming language,
Mm.
and then try to look at some applications in UI or an API, and then try to see as a manual tester, pick one scenario of your choice, where you're comfortable with your favorite, put the APIs that are correspondingly, which will do, and then you put it into the script and see it run. It'll definitely fail. It won't pass, and that's okay, because that's a good feeling to have. I mean, I know how it feels to have your script run fast. But often it's not the case, right? Because as a human, when we click, after we click on the button, we know we have to wait for a page load, right? So if the server is slow, at the back end, we can see the page loading, the spinner loading, so we will wait automatically. If it's fast, it'll, it's come like a flash. The automation, the tool doesn't know because it's a AI, it's a bot, right? It's a robot. So we have to tell them. So we have APIs even for that. So most of the people who get started with automation forget that and get frustrated that, yeah, I mean, this is something that doesn't fit what I'm trying to do, and have negative experience on getting started with automation. As they say, first impression is the best impression. So if you take step-by-step approach, this is one of the approaches which I've advised people and they've had success with. I'm sure many of them will have many approaches. So yeah, if you're someone who's new, want to get into automation, try this, and hopefully it'll help you.
All right, cool. Thank you. That's a great answer. I must admit, I've had, like everyone else, I do more API testing these days, but when I did do more UI automation, I did tend to see instances where tests failed more as issues to be investigated. Sometimes they do reveal particularly performance issues that can be improved, and there's no such thing really as, if you're overlooking tests or deleting them or muting them because they're failing, or they're not running exactly as you want them to, often they hide other issues.
From an API testing, right? Could you repeat the question?
No, I was talking about UI testing in this case. No, it's not a question. I was just making a comment.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it makes sense. Perfect. I mean, since it was a beginner question, I didn't touch on the process after, but definitely, I think one thing people should understand is automation is an investment, right? So if you don't monitor your investment, it can go up to a toss, and it will also help you greatly whenever you're short in time for release. It will help you quickly validate your build, as well as if you're not maintaining it properly, looking at how things goes on changes, be it API or be it UI testing. Yeah, definitely you'll have problems.
All right, cool. Thank you. Let's move on. So the next question on the list that we have is, with the rise of codeless and or low-code test automation, is this a threat to Selenium, Cypress, Playwright, those sorts of tools? What do you think?
I mean, long story short, I don't think so. If that's that's the long story short. Reason being, a lot of low-code, codeless, low-code, no-code tools that I've seen in the market are built on top of these tools. Because essentially, if you think as an entrepreneur, as a company, you don't want to reinvent the whole wheel, because there are a lot of tools out there. So a lot of even Tricenters, and Test Sigma, Testim. So I'm naming these tools because these are some of the low-code, no-code tools that I've seen in the market. So all of these cool players are built on top of Selenium. So they're trying to augment whatever these tools already provide in a way that they cater automation to a particular set of people, who look at automating stuff without any coding. But that's an entire different discussion altogether. But I think I've answered the question. It's definitely not a threat. They're only augmenting automation in a very different way.
Understood. Thank you. So we have a question about LambdaTest that came up next. What I'll do is I'll take this question, and then I'll take Joe Parrell's question in the meeting chat, and then we'll finish these off, and then we'll talk. If anybody else wants to ask questions, feel free. How does LambdaTest do things differently to their competitors, and what is it that LambdaTest doesn't provide when compared to similar providers?
Okay,
not my question, honest.
Yeah. I mean, we do a lot of interesting stuff, being selfish. I think being one of the players who are recent when compared to our competitors, we have the most competitive edge in terms of the architecture that it's been built on, unlike the other players who have started a way back. I know it's always a monolithic versus microservices based or whatever environment comparative that I wanted to give. Honestly, I don't know what architecture they are in. I don't want to comment on, but I'm just giving you a way to visualize. But when it comes to product offerings, definitely we do more than just giving you a set of browsers and mobile devices on cloud, which will help you enable to do cross-browser testing. We do a lot of stuff around, helping you decide how do you run your test, which is called test orchestration.
Yeah.
So I gave a complete new talk on continuous testing and test orchestration, which in itself will talk for another 45 minutes. I can share links. And in fact, it should be there on my website as well. So go take a look. So we do test orchestration, and also we have a unique product called Hyper Execute. So if you don't know about Hyper Execute, go check out, which is way, way faster than what traditional Selenium grid can provide. Coming from Selenium community, I'm
Yeah.
happy to say this because the product that we have built at LambdaTest, called Hyper Execute, is way faster than, if you're running a test in a standard Selenium grid, in a cloud. Even we have a standard grid, right? If you run a test on that standard grid versus Hyper Execute goes way faster because that's the innovation that we did, and that is definitely something distinguishing when it compares to other competitors.
All right, cool. Thank you. That's great stuff. We'll go to Joe Parrell's question next, since he's in the meeting. When it comes to tools, if you need to change tools, let's see if this actually shows up on here. I'm not sure if it does, but if it comes to tools, if you need to change tools, how do you get an organization to change a new tool where users are already embedded in an existing tool? E.g., we have a test management plugin to Jira that may not be the best fit for us, but to go to another tool seems to have some pushback from testers who don't have the capacity to integrate a new tool and move all their test cases over there and get up to speed with their project. So how do you manage the process of changing a tool with a team that's already settled and maybe slightly recalcitrant? Manoj?
Yeah, all good. I've just okay. I realized I was on mute. I was just reading the example to make sure I'm getting the right.
Yeah, it's the one in
So
the
yeah, I mean
chat.
it's a
Sorry, go on.
great question, Joe Barrow. I think it's a classic situation in most of the organizations, and I've been part of it as well. I felt this. I think it's a classic resistance to change thing, right? I mean, it's not only based on tools and testing or anything. It's basically from everything. Even if you're in, say, you're a banking project, if you're in old school mainframe, and if you wanted to move into something, cloud based, there will be some same resistance of change. So I'm trying to make a comparison analogy because it's the same case here as well. Because it may seem from a value perspective, yeah, moving from mainframe to cloud is a big thing, so it will take a lot of thing. Whereas when it comes to changing just a plugin in Jira, it might not seem much of a value and time and effort for people to even consider this as an argument and discussion. But I think once you are trying to provide, once you could find a ways to showcase their value, I think things will get easy because the test management plugin to Jira, I don't know if it's paid. If it's paid, then you can put it on the chat because the conversation is a little different if it's paid, and if it's open source and free, then things changes. I'm assuming it's paid because I'm assuming you're using tools like Zephyr and a couple of other plugins on Jira to do test management and all of it. So it's definitely a pushback, and you can basically ask. So if you say, let's put A and B, you're using A, which works well, but has been a lot of tight integration has been done, but you do feel not productive into using tool A, but you want to move to tool B. So one of the things that you can do is, try to pilot tool B and ask the company, whoever it is, if it's pilot B and they have any accelerators or plugins which can easily make them move, right? Which usually have, because these days companies are competitor ready. So they might have the plugin to accelerate all of the integration from this to this, right? So in that case, this example really helped me in my situation where we said, hey, we'd like a tool, where we don't have the capacity to do it. Either you help us, or we might have to stick for a couple of more time, and then when we have the more time, we can. It's always a speed, right? So if you take a project management, you have something called iron triangle. It's always whether it's speed, time, and then quality. So it's all of that. if it's definitely improving our productivity, then you can put a case, showcase the value on how much productivity will improve if we move to tool B, and reach out to company if it's pay tool again, if they have any help they can provide to move. If yes, that's great. If no, then yeah, it takes really a lot of collaboration game, that we have to figure out within the team, and then showcase the value, productivity increase, and all of that.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So hopefully that's a great response.
Yeah.
Hopefully Joe gets what he wants from that. Joe Powell says thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Let's move on to the remaining questions in here. So I suppose this is a very open-ended question, but somebody's asked, what programming languages should we learn to be good SDETs?
Yeah. Direct answer is no. There is no one good programming language. I think it's two ways, right? So once you learn a programming language, picking up others is easy. Going back to my first, answer to my first question, the first step is to pick any programming language and understand how you can develop things, because you're so used to test things and making sure you validate. But once you try to develop, you would have picked a language. So I would say, I think a couple of years back, Java was in trend. Right now, I see JavaScript is in trend because people try to automate web applications for UI, even for APIs. I see people use Node.js and all of it, right? So there is no one programming language to say, hey, yeah, learn Java, you're good to go for next 10 years. No, there's nothing like that. But in fact, the change in mindset that I want you to think over ask this question or for others, is if you learn a language, I'm sure the same concepts apply to other languages. It's just the semantics and syntax that might change, and it might be easy to pick you up. Say if you're learning Java, picking up C Sharp, Ruby and others should be very easy. If you're picking up JavaScript, Ruby, Python, all of this language should be very easy. So there is no one programming language. It's always, if you put it into context of a particular project, see what technology and language that your team is using, and pick that language. If it is UI automation, go for JavaScript because it works very well. It is easy to be in the same repository as your developers. They will help you review the code, improve your framework, because they are expert at it. Maybe if you're a starter, they can easily code review, because the moment you choose a language that is very different from what your team is used to, you will be siloed, right? I mean, of course, you don't want the automation efforts to be siloed effort. So that's the way to go. Look at things. But if you ask me coming from Selenium team perspective, if I have to tell you, the most downloads for Selenium that we see is still Java. But again, it varies for different person context.
I think one thing I've often heard said, and there's a lot of it makes a lot of sense actually, is that the best tool to use for a particular job is the best language is the one that your devs know, because you will need their help, and you want to engage developers in the testing process, in the automated testing process too. They need to be able to look at the tests and see what they were meant to find, what the assertions were meant to look for. And it's often, if you're in a place where everyone knows JavaScript, it's a good idea to, especially with something like Selenium, where it uses a wide range of languages.
True,
you'd be better off going down that road. So for me personally, I mean, I tend to use JavaScript a lot more these days, but I came from, when I was doing things in C# when I first got into testing and test automation. So I worked in a .NET place, and everyone knew that language. You knew that language. There were .NET bindings for all of that, and then I just progressed. I did a few things in Python and a bit in Java, but now it's all JavaScript. Right, we'll go for the last question, and then we'll open it up to the floor. What advice would you give to a young, inexperienced tester looking to make his or her way in the industry?
It's a very broad question again. I mean, I would say work hard, work smart. I think that would really sum up whatever you're trying to do. Don't really look for shortcuts. Don't look at how others are progressing in the career. You will end of the day have your own career path. Just work towards it. I think if you're still early in the career, try to learn hard and get the experience. Sometimes you easily get exploited or diverted with a lot of other things. And I've seen QAs who have changed ways. I'm not blaming them, but again, it's the opportunity, right? So opportunities will come at any time. It's just how do you to think that okay, this is how I will be in the career in the industry. Whether you started as a QA, if you want to move into some other role, great, that's good for your career. If you wanted to stay as a QA, it's great. See what else you can learn. Apart from being a tester, even or an automation tester, I would say, given the trends that are going across in the industry, it's good to learn. Always one other thing. That's something that I usually do. Whatever you're doing at work, which is great, which is what you're being paid for, based on your experience, based on your background. But there's a beautiful book called "What You Got Here Will Not Get You, Further." So yeah, I mean, if you want to go further, try to have that learning time every day for some cool stuff, because there is a lot of new interesting stuff coming in. I'm not even getting the time. I really wanted to get into the AR VR stuff, but I don't get into. So if I get a chance, I will try to dedicate the time to learn all of that, because only then you will be the industry ready, right? Because you need to be competent. Um, so yeah, I mean, always make time to learn new stuff.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Some fantastic info there. Let me just stop the screen share because we've
Yeah.
come to the end of the Slido questions. I just want to put it out to the floor, everyone who's here, including on YouTube and in obviously on Zoom. Do you have any questions you would like to pose to Manoj? Anything that you feel he might be able to help you with, or any, this is more of a general open question bit. You can either post in the chat, or if you want, you can just unmute yourself. Okay. First of all, message from Milan. Great AMA chat, Manoj.
Thanks, mate. Much
All right,
appreciated.
cool. Thank you. I just got a few questions, if you don't mind. Oh, actually, Milan. Oh, he's clapping. Do you want to join into the conversation, Milan?
No, I think go ahead. You go ahead. All good. Or do you want me to be in the conversation?
No, it's all right. Just if you want to join, it's up to you. No, it's
Awesome.
all good. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
you are a co-host, so you're more than
maybe I'll have this question. I mean, I'm really enjoying the whole chat, and thanks once again, Paul, how you have arranged the whole meetup after a long time. But then I think Manoj, the thing is, the community is still confused in the sense what to do before they are even about to decide it. And the testing community is overwhelmed by so many tools. Everybody promising start with us. I mean, is there a simple workflow diagram, or do yes no, and then you end up with like, okay, this is your tool? Is there an easy way which you have found in your past, I mean outside LambdaTest as well, which you would recommend people to pick up?
Yeah, I mean, not a great fan of having a common template, Milan. I think it's a great question. I would say because everyone's priority is changes based on whatever level they are into. Whether they are 10 years experience automation or 5 years experience manual. So yeah, I think one size doesn't fit all in this case. I would rather say have plus or minus, have a table for yourself, right? And then figure out what might be the best thing for you in a couple of years. As I was saying, that's the one piece of advice. So for me, learning AR VR was a different priority. Is not related to what I do at work, what as part of my experience in the past. But there is a reason why I chose that. So similarly, many people will have different opinions about it. Uh, there are different tools out of it. I was, just to give you a backstory, I was at this Eurostar conference last year in Copenhagen, and I met a lot of people, and I met one of the early organizers who started this conference 20 years ago, somewhere in 1980s. At that point in time, creating a testing conference itself was very tough, and they didn't have sponsors and all of it. But one comment that she made was, "It's good to see a room full of sponsors, which are all tool companies." Which is good that testing itself has evolved over a period of time, where a lot of innovation is happening in tools, where people are trying to solve problems using code, using new technologies. So I think going by that experience, there will be a lot of tools coming up. There is no doubt about it, which is always good. I wouldn't say it's more of a burden. It's more of priorities that you should try and pick it up on. It might today, it might not help you, but maybe somewhere, if you're a consultant, if you're part of a project, I'm sure it'll help you someday. Rather than you starting from ground up at zero, probably you have already informed decisions, informed things, so you can start from, say, probably step 5. I think that's where this research and learning will help. Go ahead, Paul. You have some thoughts.
All right, cool. Thanks. I just had a question that came to me actually. One of the things I don't know if this is a criticism of things I see in testing, but I find that a lot of the people who I see who get in, who not yourself particularly, but others who get into test automation, and even people who speak about it, often they come from background. They come directly from developer backgrounds. And so I sometimes get the impression that, if you come from development into, say, test automation, often you see test automation as just another type of development, And I'm wondering whether people miss out on the experience that we have, say, doing manual testing, actually learning the testing mindset and actually going through the process of coming up with scenarios. Do you find, have you worked with people, for instance, who are very good at, say, understanding a framework and coding, but say poor at writing tests that actually are
Yes.
effective? And how do you manage that? In terms of the people you work with, or subordinates, whatever.
Yeah. It's a great question. It's a very classical situation. I think before that, I hope that answered the question, Milan. Yeah, okay, I see a comment. Thank you for that. So yeah, Paul, it's a great question. I've had a mix of such people in the team. So this was way back 6 years, where I had a team where we had a developer who was interested working on test frameworks, but would not have the capability or you know uh, the mindset for testing. So he would rather focusing on building tools and plugins for the team, which will augment the testing efforts, which was essentially part of the center of excellence, who was brought into this team to help and all of it. So I think definitely the experience in testing will help, because as we say, automation is all about making sure your build or whatever changes that you're making is working fine or not. There's always a conversation of defect prevention versus defect detection, right? So again, it's another discussion altogether. I don't want to get into that right now, but uh, yes, there are situations like that. In that situation, what we have done is we have had such center of excellences who have helped the people to bring in developers who wanted to work on automation, who we had called the SDETs, right? So that's the role that it started, software development engineers in test, especially where they bring in the development knowledge, who will work on testing frameworks, who help that. And essentially, these persons were also helping testers who learn. We have previous questions in the past about how should I get started in automation, what is a programming language that we should go out of your way. So maybe if you had such people, these are the people that you should reach out first. ask if they would be willing to be a mentor, willing to help them after work, give a guided tour on how you should get started with a particular language or a tool. I think this way in the past, which has helped in my team, where we have had that collaboration between the team, and where people with particular knowledge be able to share with each other.
Okay, thanks very much. Appreciate it. So I think for me, I kind of I had a bit of a weird entry into software testing. I kind of moved from a very different area because we just desperately needed one, and they just kind of shoved me the job. Before then, I did do spell as a developer and as a DBA. That was my specialism before then. And I think I did fall into this trap, as in like I didn't I kind of thought of testing as being like a massive checklist. Very sort of I don't want to say it's very IceTQB, but it was very much old style IceTQB, and there for me, it didn't, in terms of automation, it was just take a bunch of tests and automate them without thinking. And I did, and certainly when this is when I was in the UK before I worked here, before I came here, I think I took the wrong approach, and more tests does not make for a better test automation framework. Not always, anyway. So yeah, that was my particular thing. I just want to see if there's any more questions. My apologies. Give me a second. First of all, Milana's sorry, just a quick question. Quick thing. Milana's asked to share some links, and he has done so. I put them in the YouTube chat, and also they're in the meeting chat. So you're welcome. Are there any, because I know you said you wanted to do 35 to 45 minutes. We'll wrap it up very shortly. If there aren't any more questions, sorry, I'm having a few IT problems. It's a bit disappointing. Are there any final questions that people would like to ask? You can either unmute yourself, or you can just ask in the chat. I think that's it. Look, thank you so much, Manoj, for joining and for having this AMA. Sorry. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you so much, and especially with the Sydney testers. I always say it's my second home and soon to be home.
When are you? Cool. When are you back in Sydney?
I don't know. I'm still counting days. It might happen soon. I don't know. I don't want to put it out, but yeah, it might be very soon. I'm not very sure, but yeah, it was great to be part of the panel.
No, it's great having you. Honestly, I've really enjoyed it. Do you have anything? Do you have any talks that you're coming up in the future you'd like people to know about?
Sure. I'm talking in testing talks. The Sydney edition.
Oh, cool. I'll see you there then.
Yeah, I was accepted yesterday. Had a quick call with Cameron. He had some questions about my talk, and I answered that. Which will be an interesting talk because the talk is titled "The State of Browser Automation in JavaScript," which sort of I feel the need of the hour because even you said you're using JavaScript for automation. So if you see there is number of tools in JavaScript ecosystem for automation. So my talk is all around giving a current state of different tools in the market, how they do, and some tips and tricks on what are the things to look for when you pick up an automation framework. And it's going to be all of that talk. So that's something that I'm going to do at Testing Talks in Sydney this July. So please make your way. If you haven't registered, please go ahead and do. And I would love to meet you all in person.
Oh, it'd be fantastic. Yeah, we should put a shout out for Cameron's testing talk conference. He's doing one in Sydney in June. I can't remember the exact date, and he's doing one in November in Melbourne.
Yeah,
and
that's right. Yeah.
So we'll he does some great talk. I went to the one in Melbourne back in November, and there were some really good talks. Actually, I enjoyed it, and the way it was managed as well was very good. I quite like that. There were some very interesting sponsors and people who are there to man the store, people there to man the stalls, and some great information. I thought it was very well run. Actually, are you doing any of the test bash ones this year?
No, not this year. I did, I think last year or the day previous to it, but not test batch this year. I missed the deadline, to be very honest. I didn't actually apply for it. But I did apply for other conference in the Europe, but rejections can happen for anyone, even though you're experienced. So I'm that example. My talk didn't get selected for Eurostar, and
it happens. We can't.
It
happens. Not even like James Bark gets accepted everywhere, so it's just I got turned down by a bunch of conferences.
And you know what, even at LambdaTest we are running a conference called TestMu, which was a huge hit last year. We had massive registrations. I think the highest number of people on peak online. I think I will put the link down here. So it's an online conference. So from the comfort of your home, you can attend the conference, and the CFP is also open if you want to register yourself.
Okay,
please
cool.
Go ahead and do.
Thank you so much. Thanks, that's great. Sorry, just to so we'll wrap it up there. I think people are dropping off a little bit, so I think it's we'll probably leave it there and not do the what was it, the social. But what I'll do is I'll take the LambdaTest link that you posted in the meeting chat and put it also in the YouTube chat, so that anybody who sees the YouTube live can see it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to the YouTube live audio is a bit patchy, so for anybody who wants to watch this talk and get the two talks AMA events today, what I'll do is I'll repost the recording of this as done from Zoom, and then I'll post that in YouTube, and I'll share the link. So and I'll do that within the next week. Thank you so much, everyone. Millan, Manoj, can you both stay on for a second? I'll stop the recording there.
Sure.
Have
Recording stopped.
Have a great night.
Thank you all
everyone.
for staying late till this time, and I just forgot to say that final thanks. Really appreciate all the questions we had.
No, thank you. Well, thank you for joining, and I shared the links that you posted anyway. So, but it's just been I'm overwhelmed actually. It's been a few technical problems aside, it's been a really good event.
Yeah, I still don't know if you guys can see me because my camera says on, but I can't see myself.
I can't see you. We can't see you. We can hear you. It's all right.
It says use the camera, but then nothing goes forward. But all good.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Thanks a lot, Paul, Millan, and Manoj. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Oh, thanks, Prabodh.
Thank you.
Thank you,
guys.
We will be doing. I think I should say we will be doing a couple more talks and a live event in March. I'll share them. I'll share those on LinkedIn, Twitter, and sorry.
Meetup
platform.
Group.
Sorry.
Should be fine. Awesome.
Yeah, sorry, and Meetup itself, and that'll be a chance to. But I just need to get all the details for those, which I haven't mentioned. That's why I haven't mentioned them yet. Ashley Graff, actually, who's in this call, she'll be speaking very, very shortly, this month on onboarding new testers, and looking forward to that.
That would be great. And then if it is like in-person event, it would be even better.
Yeah, are you based in Sydney, Prabodh?
I'm based in Sydney. I work for SiteMinder.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
It will be great to meet you.
No, well, we're looking forward to meet you, actually. And it's we're looking forward to it. I've got to say, I think it's we're trying to get the testing community back after a long period in COVID, where not a lot. We tried to do a number of things last year, but it was difficult to get hosts because of COVID. And there's been a bit more improvement this year. We didn't do anything for the first couple of months because of we had a couple of hosts dropped out, and so it didn't that didn't help. But it's really good just to get people even online, and also with this sort of event, because we've had interest. I don't necessarily about people who actually dialed in, but in terms of people who register, we had interest from all over the world. So
that's great.
No problems. Look,
Thank you. Thanks a
thank
lot.
you
I'll
so
drop
much,
off. I think
everyone.
you have something to discuss with
No.
Milan and Manoj.
No, thank you so much, everyone, and thanks for attending.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
Thank you. All right, sorry. I just want to say, personally, I just want to say thanks so much. There was some great information there. What I'll do is, once I've got the new video up, I'll share a link to that, and then you can share that in your own social media, if you wish, if you want to use that to promote yourselves. And I'll do that. I'm going on holiday this weekend, but I'll do it when I come back. So it'll be towards the end of next week. But
Cool. Have a great break. Where are you up to?
I'm off to Singapore for.
Oh, wow.
Oh God, still
Going to the Sentosa or somewhere out?